All right, before we start the actual talk, you guys are sitting on the DevGam feedback cards, so make sure to fill them out after the talk, please. You can win prizes at the award ceremony later the day. Yes, so let's start with the talk. Here we have Sean Druitt and Daniel Fisher from the Queensland University of Technology. And today's talk is about funny quotations, Oculus plus lasers equals dinosaurs. As they do, of course. And these guys are going to talk about their fun installation, the Cube, and which they made with Oculus.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for coming. I'd firstly like to start by apologising for our accents. Understand they're a bit weird at times. We'll try and get through everything, but if there's something that we cover that we're not getting across or we're not communicating too well, please just let us know in the Q&A part. So I'm going to talk about the Cube today. So the Cube is a large-scale installation that we have at QUT. And just before I dive into this, what we're using our presentation for on today is actually the Cube space. So as we fly around in our talk, you'll see different parts of the Cube as we go around. So let's dive in. So here we. I'm Sean. I'm the Cube Studio Manager. So I oversee the development of our team as well as the day-to-day operations. My previous experience was hospital management, and then I went into the games industry, and I did 5 years at Half-Brick Studios as a producer. And then I started at the Cube in late November.
I'm Daniel Fisher. So I worked at Half-Brick with Sean on a lot of different projects as a lead designer, and then I made the transition into software engineering in January 2014 as the engineer that works on the Cube. So we have made these games. So we made a lot of these at Half-Brick. So we've worked on Connect, like the Fruit Ninja Connect, we've worked on iPhone, and we also did a lot of work for hire projects, so we know what it's like to grind out on DS and all those sort of platforms. We went through a lot of publishing nightmares and good times and bad times, but it was really fun and we learned a lot of things.
Yeah, so we lived on a lot of different sides of game development, from doing work for hire through to our own IP. And when we started doing our own IP, that's when games like Fruit Ninja dropped, and we were lucky to be a part of that back in the day, and it's now had 1 billion downloads.
Yeah, some crazy amount.
It's pretty good.
Yep.
So yeah, and then as Dan said, over a diverse range of platforms as well, which actually helped us in a way go to the Cube and do what we're doing now.
So these are the projects that we've worked on at the actual installation at the Cube. So we did a retro arcade with 3 different games that involved mathematics, so mixing fun games with teaching kids math. The plasma wall, which is a Connect-based installation of all kinds of crazy plasma sort of artistic interpretations that use the Connect to map your body motion to all sorts of different art pieces. Solve the Cube, which is kind of the management system we use for the Cube, which runs all the applications and makes sure things switch correctly. And ChemWorld, which is a massive launch for chemistry, Science Week. And so that project took about 8 months to finish and had like science experiments. So the flame test that you do in high school, I guess we did it in Australia, I'm not sure if they have it here, where you put like copper in a flame and see what color it burns. They've actually banned that back home, so now you can do it virtually on the Cube. Yeah.
Okay, and then these are some of the platforms that we've worked on over our time. So PSP Minis, Oculus, Nintendo DS, games for Windows, Xbox Live Arcade, as well as Xbox indie games when it was around back in the day, yeah. And then the App Store and Android before we moved to the university. And
so we've actually had a fair bit of experience sort of trying out a platform when it's really early, like on XBlig. We actually released a fair few games on XBlig and a fair few games on Minis that went nowhere, but it was a really good experience, and that experience actually let us build Fruit Ninja for iPhone, and that took off. So we've had a lot of hits and misses on completely new platforms, and we've taken that experience to the Cube.
So the Cube, what is it? So this is a picture of our main wedge space. in the cube. So it's a fixed installation over 2 stories. So this is our main space, it's 2 stories tall. There's 55-inch LCD touch panels all along the bottom there. Each one of those panels has 32 infrared cameras built into them. Each pair of screens runs off one PC, and then all PCs are networked to each other. So it's a massive distributed system. And then on the back of those 2-story zones are single-story versions of the cube as well. So we roll out constant streams of development for this that we do in-house, but we also export externals, and we'll cover a bit more on that coming up as well. So there's about 12 kilometres of Cat6 cable running from the cube up to our server space and then back down again. So it's quite a big beast.
Keeping it going is quite an undertaking.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we need to be cautious of. We are open to the public every day. 10 till 4 every day you can come in and play with the cube. So there was a few sort of mission statements of reasons why it was built. One was community engagement, so actually getting bodies onto the campus and seeing what we're up to. We visualise research on the space as well, so we can show the public research in action that's done at the university. But also it's built around STEM engagement, so getting in high school students and doing part of their curriculum work on the cube and bringing textbooks to life is really what we're about. We need to be careful about that though, because we know that putting a textbook on a touch interface isn't really the coolest thing to do. So we build fun games first, and then we make those educational and interactive for the user base. So our team. So it's a relatively modest team for what we do and what we output, but we have 3 programmers, a digital interactive designer, a digital artist, a systems administrator for the actual infrastructure itself, and then a technology officer to help keep the lights on as well. And then I take on sort of the production manager role within that team as well. So the cube actually existed before we started together at QUT. It was built by a development team of about 35 people, and they just brute forced their development to get it up and running for the launch of the building. So a new building was being built at the university, and the cube was being built inside it, and the launch applications had to be ready for the building to be open. So yeah.
So that was one of the biggest challenges early on, was that we had to make sure that the space was kept current. So that we sort of came into an environment where they had all these different applications, and some of them ran all right, some of them didn't. There was a lot of holes, I guess, on some of the zones, where some of the zones on the cube, the smaller spaces, didn't have any content. They were just running videos, which was really boring and not interactive. So we had to find sort of solutions to all that. And we also walked into an environment where there was no tools pipeline, there was no sustainable development process at all. It was just kind of like, yeah, we threw some stuff on it and there it is, and maybe it crashes every Tuesday. It's like, so that was a big challenge initially to fix those problems.
Yeah. And then, as I said, it's a real challenge for us to keep the space fun and engaging for the public as well as the students coming in to learn on it. And then we've had to address along the way all the things that we inherited. So we understand that the team had a really hard time of it getting ready for launch. And as I said, they were brute forcing their development to get over the line. But now that we've come in, we've wanted to consolidate all that down to a sustainable system so that we can make it easier for ourselves, so that we don't have to do everything from scratch all the time, but also that we can open ourselves for externals to come and engage in the space and build content.
Yeah, so students, we also have a residency stream, so we work with companies like Ars Electronica in Austria and other people around the place to bring artists to Australia and have them make content for the Cube now that that's possible. And we also have contractors that do work for hire, so they make projects for the Cube, and we work with them heavily. So we also have an undergraduate program where undergrads can come and make stuff for the Cube, and we support them as well. So there's a lot of moving parts for just a team of 8 to sort of control.
We also run corporate events out of the space, so we're right next door to our state government, so they will engage our space to run up new initiatives and come and talk in front of it with media and such. So in itself, keeping the lights on every day is quite a big challenge for such a unique installation.
Yeah, so a lot of our industry experience helped us conquer all those challenges. So obviously we worked at Halfbrick for 5 years, and one of the things we'd done at Halfbrick is keep up with platforms. So like I was talking about before with the minis and the XPligs that completely failed, but taught us how to make cool games for a platform that was just coming through and getting a hit on mobile. We did the same sort of thing to keep up with the VR changes that were coming and to capitalize on that and to sort of wrestle with the beast that is the cube and make it a sustainable sort of environment. And yeah, so a lot of the things we learned at Huffrick as well helped us keep the games really fun and deal with stakeholders. And you know, when your CEO walks in and he's like, oh, I think someone was saying, put a purple hippo in the game. And it's like, no, we can't do that. It'll just break everything. Also, the purple hippo is 5 million polygons. What are you doing? So we know how to deal with that sort of problem.
In itself, that has been very difficult because we're the only team within the university rolling out constant content like we do. So games development is taught in the courses, but there isn't in the actual professional side of the university a team like ours. So there's been a bit of a knowledge gap for us to be able to communicate what we do up through our supervisory stream and also help them get an understanding of how long things take and what it's like to develop.
Cool. So now we'd like to get into the Oculus plus lasers equals dinosaurs bit of the talk.
Yep.
And we want to share a bunch of sort of development stories that we've gone through on the Cube that we feel don't just apply to what we've done at the Cube, but probably translate pretty well, hopefully, to a lot of the challenges you guys are having as publishers or developers or indie games or that sort of thing. So this is some of the crazy stuff we've had to go through to get the Cube up and running.
Okay. All right, so SDK fragmentation. So all the original batch of projects were all built in something different. So the portfolio consisted of projects built in Talk, Unity, Ruby, Python, and other crazier things. There was actually one project that was built in a custom language that only 3 or 4 people on the planet knew. And then we had to take that on and try and maintain it. So pretty crazy stuff. And as a result of that, they had to keep reinventing a lot of the technical challenges of the Cube each time they built it. So they were burning very early dev time before they even got into the creation of the projects. It didn't have a lot of knowledge in-house to sustain the unique project and its quirks. So it was unfortunate that that sort of brute force team got stripped right back. So there was just a skeleton crew there when we came in. And third-party developers wanted to work on the Cube easily, but we didn't have a system for allowing them to do that at that point. And there was also a lack of structured development process. So, yeah, we had to review all that.
So the other thing that Sean didn't really mention is before we turned up, there was no actual development process at all. Like there wasn't even waterfall or agile or anything. So Sean actually did a lot of work to introduce the Scrum methodology, which we'd sort of brought over from Huffrick. And he worked very hard to make all that happen. So now we completely use Agile and it works really well for us. We've adapted it to our own needs and sort of morphed it. But there's other talks, I'm sure, on Scrum.
Yeah. I mean, it was good for us to manage our projects internally and then communicate with some level of certainty when we'd be able to deliver content, but also give that transparency back up our chain about what was happening.
So one of my favorite things to do in the world is to build a framework for any problem ever. So we built a framework for the Cube. I'd been messing around with Unity from Huffrick. Some of our projects had started to use Unity and it was starting to get really popular. One of the reasons we picked it was because there was huge support online. You could pretty much look up any problem, especially as an undergrad or a third-party developer, and it would probably be solved on Unity, and if it, like on the web. And if it wasn't, then you could probably email someone and check it out, and someone would actually help you out. So we picked Unity as a solution to the Cube, and all projects, mostly, were going to use Unity, and we would provide an SDK built on Unity for all of our developers, for undergrads, for third-party developers. So it was a bit of an undertaking because we've had undergrads that are completely fresh out of uni, or they're even studying at uni and they want to use it. So they're like finding out what a prefab is. And then we've got people who are trying to use compute shaders to do super crazy, awesome, like graphical art and all sorts of things. So we had to solve sort of both those ends of the scale with our SDK. So we put a lot of work into designing it in a modular way. So there's a lot of little modules. So the touch, for example, our touch system is completely different to Windows or anything. It's called TUIO touch, and the touch panels specifically have this sort of UDP port touch approach. So we had to make that as a module, build it, make it super robust, and then you can either scrap it if you don't want touch or keep it in the build. And all the camera splitting and the networking and all of that stuff is designed that way so you can slot out or slot in something. So if an undergrad doesn't need to know about the networking, then we can get rid of that and give them a very small package that they can understand. And that's really helpful for us. That's been really good, being able to do that for our third-party developers. And there's like a shader sort of package as well. So we can give people access to all the compute shaders and C++ plugins that you can mess around with in Unity to really do some crazy stuff, but we don't want to give that to the undergrads. So there's also, one of the biggest things is we made a simulation mode. So you can actually run the cube on your PC in a limited sort of capacity, which is really handy. And I'd recommend doing that if you're going to do anything like that with installations or anything. Don't sort of try and use the hardware every time. Try and build something that approximates what you're working on. Be it like even like a 3DS. Don't try and build it on the 3DS each time. Like Unity has an emulator anyway, I think, but always build something that you can really quickly test stuff in. I think there's been a couple talks on prototyping. It'll just save you heaps of time.
And then the SDK itself evolves per project. So every time we do something on the cube, the next project or anyone else coming in will get benefit from that. So, and for us internally as well. So here we go around the cube. Challenge number 2, so working on the space. So time on the cube is precious. As I said, we're open 10 till 4 to the public every day. And they don't understand, for the most part, work in progress. So we limit our time on the actual physical space when we're doing work in progress builds. The other thing is as well is that they can forecast their visits up to 5 days in advance by going to our website. So if they're coming in expecting to see one of our projects and we've torn that down to run up something to test it, we feel like we've let them down a bit and we haven't met their need to come and see our content. So we're very cautious about how long we actually spend on the physical installation itself and when we do that. Sometimes when we're testing content, we need the whole team to be there as well, and that can take time. So we limit our time of actually getting everyone together so we don't have to break everyone's flow and development and things like that. The builds that we do need to be thoroughly tested before we deploy them to the space. So we do the simulation mode in the SDK. We've then got our mini cube upstairs in our studio, which has 4 screens and a small projection space. So we test it on there to make sure everything's up and running before we go downstairs. So we're trying to make that time on the installation very precious. And the simulation mode was very good for that. So yeah, it's good for testing code, but as we put there, not as good for testing asset layout or graphical features.
Yeah, you just can't get a sense of what a layout of the space might look like. So say you're trying to build a forest for one of our projects, like the Dinosaurs Project that we've got happening at the moment. We're building this big dinosaurs exhibition. You couldn't really tell what it was going to look like on the space just from staring at it on your PC screen, unfortunately. So yeah, we looked around for a solution to this problem, and it was really hard because we had a lot of ideas of how to solve it, but a lot of people were trying to like expand the simulation mode over a couple of monitors and all sorts and use different PCs and that sort of stuff. But luckily around the university, sort of a couple of people had been playing with the Oculus Rift and showing off some really cool stuff. And we had this cube model that we'd had from one of the really early exhibits we've got. And we were able to build this sort of Oculus Rift version of the cube. So people would sit in the cube, in an Oculus in the cube, and then they could see sort of what they were working on. There were massive problems with that. So some of the problems we came up with was rendering what is essentially like a 20,080 pixel sort of space down to like the screens in the virtual environment. So we had to pull a lot of tricks and make a lot of compromises as well. So I think at least at this stage, working on the Rift is a little bit about compromises. Like sometimes you just can't do the things you want to do, so you've got to be clever about it. So we render at 4K and then put that on the cube and for all intents and purposes, it works quite well. So we got to a point where the code team was pushing pretty hard to make like a whole simulated cube in the Oculus Rift. But then we sat down and talked to the artists and designers, and it wasn't what they needed. They just needed to visualize the space and be able to see like the forests they were working on and that sort of thing. And they didn't need it super high res. They just needed to know where things were and what it would approximately look like and the perspective that you would get if you were in the space. And so we achieved those things, and then we said, okay, that's good enough for the artists and designers, and we didn't try and overreach and perfect this feature that essentially was finished enough that it served its purpose. So that ended up really well.
Yeah, and it is great in a visual way to be able to space things out, especially on the main space, which is 2 stories tall. So to be able to run our projects on the walls in a virtual space and then walk up to it in a virtual environment is fantastic for us to go up close and then look up at what it's going to look like on the wall. So it was really invaluable for us.
Yeah, and it's things like seeing how big a dinosaur would be in real life that you just can't get out of a PC screen. So that was really good.
Okay, challenge number 3, future technology. So the cube's been open now itself for 3 years, and we don't ever want it to go stale. We don't want it to be stagnant. So we understand that the hardware over time and the software and some of the older projects from launch will get dated. So all new projects that we pitch should have something new or unique and should be featured in its technical innovations for what we're doing. This specific challenge arose again when we pitched an idea for the project that we're working on now called Dino Zoo. So the premise is a zoo environment that's just on the other side of the wall. So everything's in true scale, so the T-Rex is at life size for you up against the glass. And we wanted to build an environment where they would intelligently be aware of you going up in the space before you even touch the screens. So I wanted them to be able to follow you and stalk you around before you touch the wall, and also to be able to get eyeball to eyeball with you, or if a child was there, attack at the children at the screen. So we were going for 100% fear.
Got to scare all the children.
Yeah, taking it back from there. But that presented some very good technical challenges for us. So we needed to find a solution that felt natural to the user so that the dinosaurs wouldn't wig out if they were trying to have a look at you. And we wanted to add a lot to the user experience as a result of that.
Yeah, and we also wanted it to be expandable for future projects. So one of the goals on the cube is that if we roll out a technology, like we have Kinects on one of the spaces, we don't just want to roll that out for one of the projects and then forget about it completely. We always try and reuse the tech that we work on. If you're sinking all this time into developing sweet tech, like for Kinect or what I'm about to talk about, you might as well reuse it for your next project, even in a small capacity, just as a cool feature. So if you can fit in all the work you've done on the tech that you just made, you might as well use it. So yeah, for the solution to this problem where we wanted the dinosaurs to stalk, we went through a bit of an R&D phase. So we use Kinects at the moment on one of our zones, like I was just saying, and we thought maybe we could hang a bunch of Kinects around the cube and like volumetrically map the whole space. And that is crazy business, and you probably shouldn't try that in a 20 meter by 20 meter huge zone. So the throw on the Kinects just wasn't enough, and hiding Kinects in little nooks and crannies was very difficult. So we quickly figured out we probably couldn't go down that route. And we might have to pick a smarter implementation. And one of the requirements was that we wanted height. So if you're a child, we wanted the dinosaur to be able to tell that you're this high. And if you're a tall human, then up here. And that's why we thought the volumetric approach would be great, but it just didn't work out when we tested it in the lab. And so we figured out that we could use some robotics operating software that had been being used around the uni to actually like track where the robot was, and take the industrial laser that was on that robot, get a bunch of them, like 4 of them, in a space, and then map the space in 2D. And we're excited that we could now have people walk around a space and we can track them, very cool, but we have no idea how high they are. So we actually just came up with a really simple solution. There's some research on the internet where your foot size actually very effectively correlates to how high you are. So a child's foot is about that long, say. that correlates into like being 1.1 meters tall. So we actually just measure their foot distance, length, and then we map that to how high they are, and that's been really successful. We've had about like a 90-95% success rate with how tall people are, and it feels really good when you're in the space. The other thing was that we obviously couldn't just like tear the whole cube down, put some lasers down, and dick around for 24 hours a day. So we used our previous Oculus implementation to actually like dummy the whole setup with lasers. So we could jump into the Oculus space. There would be dinosaurs on the actual cube in the Oculus, and they would track you in the space. And it was really sweet. And it kind of confirmed the feature for us as well. So we could test this out without having to even go down to the cube or put lasers on the cube or anything. We could just track people with some dummy data. And it was really cool.
Yeah, it was pretty trippy walking around in the VR space with 3 raptors watching you as you walked along in front of them.
Yeah.
So we knew we were on a bit of a winner there.
Yeah, so that was very cool.
So looking to the future. So we're always hunting for new projects and tech, especially rolling into 2016 now. So we're starting to build up our roadmap for what projects are coming next. So Dino Zoo will launch in December this year, and then we're free agents to build cool stuff. So we're currently experimenting with glasses, free 3D. We're looking at upgrading the physical panels on the space. We're moving to 4K projectors, so it'll be on the main 2-story space, it'll be 2 4K projectors on each side. So it'll really boost us up. Anything cool we can find, really, 3D printing we've got there.
Yeah, if you have really cool tech that you know about or is super secret or whatever, let us know, because we're always looking for crazy things to do on the cube. We were talking at one point about strapping Oculuses to people as they walked in the door, but apparently we can't do that for hygiene reasons.
Among other things.
Yeah.
So some challenges coming up for us is more structured external development streams for undergraduates, contractors coming into us, and anyone really interested in making something on the cube. So we've consolidated our internal processes now, and we're starting to do some really cool stuff. And now we really want to get to that sort of idea that we have of building a cube for everyone. So anyone can come and pitch an idea. We can internally fund it like a publisher sort of agreement. Or we've got artists and resident streams as well, so you can apply to come in and be like a live-in artist for a period of time. You can also pitch ideas to us that we can build for you in collaboration. So we're getting very close now to be able to open up the doors and do it in a sustainable way where everyone can just build really cool stuff.
And we're getting more and more undergraduates doing work on the cube, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So we're trying to feed back into the community and share some of our game developer experience with the upcoming undergrads from the games stream. So that's really cool as well.
Yeah. So we put there, this could be you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's us. And in walks one of our raptors from the Dino Zoo.
It's an Australian
That's an Australian
Raptor.
raptor. He's about 6 meters long. And yeah, pretty nasty piece of work.
Yeah, he'll eat you, yeah.
So thank you. We burnt through that very quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, guys. Thank you for the talk. Are there any questions? Yes.
And I realize we didn't cover a lot of technical stuff, so if you do want to ask more technical questions about our experience with any of the tech that we used, feel free to ask.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I wanted to ask you about okay, so you have a very vivid, as a company, you have a very vivid video game background. How did it happen that you were tasked with this project, with this grand educational project like the Cube?
So we actually worked at Halfbrick for 5 years, and the company went through some fairly dramatic changes. It was during the free-to-play boom, so there was a lot of stuff going on company-wide, and myself and Sean made the decision to leave and go work on this crazy project at the university, mostly because it's the largest interactive space in the Southern Hemisphere, and it just sounded like something crazy and challenging to do. And I got to make the leap from being a lead designer into being an engineer, which is a really cool goal of mine, to learn a bit more code. And it's been a really wild ride, so I think we're both pretty happy that we made the call, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a grant stream as such where we work, so we're employed internally by the university.
Yeah.
So when we started looking for what else was out there, the university was advertising the positions that we now have. So we're on fixed term contracts, so our contracts roll through till the end of next year. And then we have the option of rolling over or reapplying for them. So they try and keep it on a short cycle because they really don't know how long they'll have the cube around for. So I guess that's our challenge, is to keep it relevant and fresh for the university. And the cube itself was actually internally funded out of our big boss's discretional budget. So he really wants to drive that STEM education and community engagement and visualising research in action.
Yeah. So the university raised a lot of money to get the cube as a project up and running through philanthropy as well as some funding from the government, that sort of thing. The other thing is the cube studio team is almost like a game studio within the uni. So we've got our own office and we can sort of do our own thing most of the time without the uni getting too much involved, apart from the stakeholder system that we have. We've got to sort of impress the stakeholders and that sort of thing, and run pitching rounds where people can pitch ideas for the cube. And we do the corporate event sort of deal and that sort of thing.
So it's not us independent of that situation either. So when people come in to pitch ideas, we actually throw our pitches in as well. So we don't just get to come up with our own stuff and run with it. We've got to be in the mix with everyone. So that keeps us ahead of the curve a lot of the time as well.
Any questions there?
So I get this right that you had some interaction stuff going on, and but did you have, like, I mean, the projection space is huge, I guess, and the interaction mainly happens with the touch panels, right? Have you thought about some other interaction models where people, what have you done till now besides of these tracking? You could track people, right? You track people in the room, exactly, and interaction through the touch interfaces.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we moved towards doing the motion tracking solution, was that we just didn't have a solution for people working on the projection space. So we do have this massive area, but it's just not that interactive, right?
Yeah.
But the motion tracking allows for this sort of a bit passive, but you're in the space moving around and the projection space can react to that, and we know that it's there, rather than having to walk up to a touch panel and really explicitly, almost like an iPhone, use buttons and things like that. So,
because I don't know if you were at my talk today at the 11, we used a system that's called Happy Fun Times. It's have you heard about that?
No, sorry.
It's a pretty awesome system. It's done by Greg Tavares, an ex-Google employee who I met a few weeks ago. And the thing is that there you have, you can have, like, every mobile phone or every device that has a browser becomes a controller. Because what you can do there is, and it's super easy integrated into Unity. So what you could do there, for example, that every guest that comes in with this mobile just logs into your Wi-Fi. I mean, we did this this morning, and you can have up to, I don't know, 200 players or something like that join. And everyone has a controller in their hands, because, I mean, people have mobile phones, and I would imagine that this would be an awesome...
That'd be perfect,
I mean, combine that with the tracking of people, and holy shit.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's it. We keep trying to build the features so cool ideas like that can happen.
Yeah,
so
that's the kind of stuff we're looking for.
That was my pitch, by the way.
Can we grab you afterwards?
And that's exactly the sort of tech that we're looking for all the time.
We have another question here.
Sure.
Okay, guys, so does the QUT project has anything to do with the fact that in Australia everything wants to eat you?
The dinosaurs one does, yeah. We actually have two projects that are things that want to eat you. So we have a virtual reef, which is the Great Barrier Reef, and there's a big whale,
humpback
whale, and the shark comes through and everything, and that's pretty cool.
Jellyfish and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but it's not as interactive as we're planning for the dinosaurs. So the dinosaurs are gonna, like, run at the screen and try and scratch. Beg your pardon? Sorry.
I think it's just the national game industry peculiarities about something that wants to eat you, and you have to run for your life.
Yeah, I think it's very Australian, yes, to make something about surviving in our country.
So in the Dinosaurs Project, we'll have 5 unique Australian dinosaurs and then 5 international ones as well. Yeah. So you'll get a good sense of what was scary down with us and what was scary everywhere else. Yep. So good mix of herbivores and carnivores as well.
More questions? I have a quick one.
Yes.
Do we have access to your SDK, like on GitHub or something?
So we're currently looking into that. We're at a point where it's really good, and we're really happy for the developers we're currently working with to use it. There are a couple of little areas where we're tightening it up. There's also the problem that we would love to release it, but due to the like licensing of the university and the IP laws of the university and that sort of thing, it's a little bit more complicated than that, I guess. We work heavily with Ars Electronica, and they love to open source all their stuff, so we're really keen to get it out there, but there's just a few things to work out, I guess.
We also don't have the team size at this point to appropriately manage that.
Yeah.
So to open our doors for people just to build stuff off-site and then deliver it to us, we don't really have a system for that. Yeah. But where we're at the moment is being able to use our time appropriately over the course of 12 months to be able to support teams to come and do that. Yeah. So that's why we get people to apply for ideas and things like that so that we can manage evenly across our whole team.
Yeah, because we don't want to turn into a support desk, I guess. And the other thing is, if all of a sudden like 300 people were trying to make things for the Cube, because it's only one physical piece of hardware, testing becomes an issue. If we could give cubes out to everybody, that'd be amazing, but we can't, unfortunately. So we've struggled with it heaps, that it is just this one installation that we work on. And obviously, yeah, we can't just have 300 people wanting to test this stuff all at the same time, unfortunately.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
One day. Do you want a cube in your city?
Okay, now a question.
Just a quick follow-up to the previous question. So, yeah, the Cube is one and only in the original installation, but is it possible to maybe, if and when you release the SDK, to make some own versions, like, you know, the cube, vertical cube, horizontally spaced cubes, and so on and so forth?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do consultations for people that want to build their own as well. Yeah. So we do knowledge sharing of how we've approached developing for it and the actual physical installation. So we do get visited quite often internationally by people who want to build their own.
Yeah.
Whether they want to necessarily do the big two-story version, or whether they want to do a single story, or, you know, landscape or portrait screens, you know, we can help troubleshoot all that for people. There's
a university just down the road from us that is currently sort of building their own cube. They've called it something different, of course, but they're going through all the installation stuff, and we're trying to knowledge share with them a bit. So we're really open to the possibility of, yeah, like whatever sort of installation you're doing. And that involves the SDK as well. So there are some things in the SDK that are quite cube specific, like the fact that we have touch panels down the bottom and a projection space. That's a common theme throughout the whole cube. So if all of a sudden you put like double the layer of touch panels or something, there would be a little bit of work involved in transitioning that, but they're the kind of changes that we would love to see if we did go down sort of an open sourcing route or something like that, like an installation SDK. So, yeah.
Any more questions?
We're going to hang around for a bit as well, guys, so feel free to come and grab us after.
Yeah, hello. Quick question. Do you have some video with example how your cube works?
Not on us. We're actually currently getting one made. Yeah.
Okay.
It's on there.
More questions? If not, I guess you guys are around, right?
We will be around.
We can approach you guys. So I'd say give it up again for Sean and Daniel.
Thanks.
Thank you.